Alright everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be reviewing a new sword sent to me by Darksword Armory. Look at that beauty. This sword is quickly becoming one of the favorite swords that I own. Let's go ahead and just pull it out of the scabbard here really quick. We're going to set this off to the side. This sword right here, you'll notice a few very unique features. If you look down the blade, the first thing that we're seeing is this beautiful S-shaped crossguard. And another thing, the most iconic piece of this, is going to be that ring. And you can see it slightly turned upward on that side. Let's go ahead and get a nice close look at this blade specifically. Now this sword kind of lives comfortably around the 16th and 17th centuries as we start to transition away from longer medieval swords into more things like sabers, small swords, and rapiers. So this type of a sword would be quite rare in its typology, but not so rare that we wouldn't have seen it on the medieval battlefield or in a judicial duel. Looking down this, first we'll start with the pommel. We have a beautiful circular pommel right there at the end. And you can see they've made this really nice feature right here with a twisted kind of wire wrap going around the outside, which I think looks absolutely incredible. If you look here down at the grip, you can see that we have a very nice cord-wrapped leather grip with a very subtle glue of the leather on the back. Looking up here, we have an extremely shiny crossguard, an extremely shiny hilt going around the outside. That ring is super solid. You can see we have all these grooves cut into the outside. It's beautiful. The interior of the guard is nice and smooth. On each side of our crossguard right here, we can see where your finger would be attached. Going on either side of that ring, you have just a little bit of grooves, which gives you just a little bit more grip. Looking down the center of the blade, you can see that we have a very subtle hollow grind and a very, very shiny mirror polish all along there. Oop. You can see the polish is very even going all the way up the blade. Looking down at the cross, you can see that the blade doesn't have any gap on either side of the guard. And that's kind of a marker of quality. Now, one of the things that we are looking at, especially when we're looking at some of these higher end sword makers, is fit and finish. With this guy, we've seen it on the channel before, we can knock it, and you hear it rings like a bell. You can smack it, nothing rattles loose, and you can see this one has a very nice spring steel on it. So if I'm holding the sword out and I hit it, you can see that the vibrations reverberate in all the right places. Especially if I smack it on the blade, you can see that our cutting nodes are going to be right there and right there down towards the end of the blade. When those two things are together, it kind of makes for a very unique cutting sword. Now this sword, like I said, was sent to me for free by Darksword Armory in anticipation of running a bunch of other of their creators looking through it. So let's go ahead and look at some of the technical specs here. This is a look down the blade. I have right here my handy dandy measuring tape that we're going to use. I'm sticking the point right there in the top. We're measuring all the way down to the guard. Down to the guard, we were about 38 inches long on the blade, which is quite long. If we use something like a more common cutting sword, we're looking more between like 36 to 38 inches. So this one is going to be a longer sword than many people are familiar with. However, I don't think that's really much of a detriment. A cutting sword is the Albion Viceroy right here, and he has a blade length that I would consider to be a little long for most people. We're sitting at 35, so about 3 inches longer on this Darksword Armory Ring Hilted sword. So not too much longer than a sword that many people would be familiar with. For books that we're looking at from the medieval times, we have a translation by a dude named Tom Leone of the Venetian Rapier. If you open up to like the first couple of pages, it talks about a master named Gigante. And Gigante is probably my favorite Renaissance rapier source. And even Gigante, when he is picturing himself in the book, we can see that he's represented with a sword that is very, very similar to the sword that we'd be looking at. Here's kind of a picture of what he looks like. Has a sword very, very similar to this sword that the Darksword Armory was able to give me. So it's kind of cool to be like, hey, this is a picture of him from 1606, so a very comfortably early 17th century sword. So even a rapier master recognizes the need for something like this. Now, a lot of hema fencers, we are more familiar with swords that just have a straight crossguard, meaning just a straight bar that goes across. That ring right there is a little bit strange. Now, it's not a bad feeling, but you can definitely feel that there is some weight coming off on the side. So you do feel the sword kind of tipping that way when you're swinging it through the air. Once you know it's there, you can compensate for it, and it's fairly easy. Now, why might somebody want a ring like this? Many of you who are familiar with the German tradition, we're looking at a very, very strong master cut called a Schielau. And if you've been watching the channel for a long period of time, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. That is where you use your thumb up the false edge of the blade, and you cut down your opponent's blade, displacing their sword and hitting them. Now, if we have that ring, if we can get their blade to the outside, I can slide that ring down and hit. And I'm a lot more safe. In fact, my angle can be a lot more dramatic on this axis. That ring helps to keep me super safe, where before you have to do more of a lateral cut down that direction and less of a cut that way. So the ring really helps a lot with your hand protection. And then not for too much extra weight, I think it's totally worth it. Get some more of the distinct measurements of this sword. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the guard here. Total from the guard to the end of the sword, we're at about 1 foot and a little bit. So 12.5 inches, so plenty of room for the big meaty hands. If you have little girl hands too, you can kind of sink it up in there and you'll still be able to fight very well. But this feels very much like a fetter. In fact, anyone that has been doing HEMA for a long time will understand that a sword with this long, skinnier grip should feel very, very light in the hands and very snappy and very quick. And I can say that's definitely true. Because of the way that the guard is shaped, we have this very subtle waist coming down towards the end. I can grip it in that lovely handshake grip, and I can feel the point at my edge super quick. Now the sword, because it is so heavy, and it is a bit, well, it's not super heavy, because it is on the heavier side and it's blade heavy this way, we can get those very powerful cuts in. But because we have that really comfortable contoured grip there, I can stick my sword out and very easily dip under my opponent's blade and do what's called a cavazione, or if you're a heretic German tradition, then you can look at what's called the Dirkwechsel. Both of those things are very easily done with this. There's just a little bit more of a transition because it is a bit heavier in the blade than it is down here at the hilt. Someone who really knows me and knows how I fence in HEMA tournaments, you're going to be very familiar with the type of sword I like to use. That would be the Sig. Oh, how did all my medals get in there? Man, those pesky things, they're absolutely everywhere. It's almost like I know what I'm talking about. Pull those off here really quick. The Siggy longswords that I like to use all have those rings, at least 1 or 2 of them. And if you're familiar with the Schiltless brand, this sword is almost identical in dimensions, weight, feel as our longsword here. So you can see pretty much looking all the same going all the way out to the end, and they're pretty much the exact same length. So if anyone likes to train with the same swords that they practice with, a Siggy Schiltless normal-sized sword is pretty much exactly the same feel in the hands. So the people that know what that looks like, you'll know how this sword feels. I talked quite a bit about how this sword is used, but what many of you guys are wondering is how does this Ring Hilted Longsword by Darksword actually cut? Well, now you can see, because I accidentally pulled out all my medals here, that I have plenty of reason to know about what cuts and what doesn't. This sword, I would say, is probably top tier cutting sword. It is cutting just about as well as anything else I've ever cut with. And let me play some footage for you so you can see what we're talking about. This sword, cutting through tatami, feels like butter, especially after I got it professionally sharpened, because it came sharp from the box, but I like to get mine as razor sharp as possible. So you have a local guy that I use, very highly rated fencer, very highly rated cutting competition dude. So I put together, he did some cutting here, I did some cutting there. And you can see how easily this just sails through the tatami. So anyone that's concerned about the cutting mechanics of the sword, the cutting nodes, how it vibrates in the hand, don't worry about it. I've had 0 issues with cutting with this sword. I feel fairly confident that this sword specifically would perform pretty well in a cutting tournament scenario. Now, in a real life scenario, this sword, because it is so long, you'll be able to outrange a lot of other long swords. It's going to move slightly slower. But because we have just a little bit extra length, we can snap those cuts in really fast and be able to get to our opponent just a little bit outside of what he uses. So if you're more comfortable fighting with your Siggy Schiltless longsword, you're going to be a lot more familiar fighting with a sword that's slightly longer here as well. So I have pretty much no issues with the sword. Could have been a little bit sharper when it came from the box, just because I like that razor thin, but as they say, it is battle ready. And I'm pretty sure a lot of medieval swords didn't have a razor thin edge as they went into combat. So if you're very familiar with how to fight with the Siggies, or just with a Federate in general, you'll be fairly familiar with how to fight with this type of a longsword. And yeah, that's really all there is to it. I have pretty much no problems with this. It's quickly becoming my favorite longsword that I own, especially since it's just such a beautiful showpiece. The hilt foot and finish is flawless. I usually like a little bit more of a satin finish on it, just from a personal standpoint, but this nice, shiny, polished finish is beautiful as well. And you can see a lot of the showpieces in museums are going to be taken to this super high polish as well. So it's very much of an heirloom piece as well as a practical piece. And I have no issues with how it feels in the hand. I have bigger hands. This feels perfectly fine to me. I really love the hollow grind in there too, which a lot of swords, especially cutting swords from nowadays, they don't have the hollow grind. Now, for those of the people who don't know what a hollow grind is, it's just where they take the diamond cross-section, which looks like this, and they squish in these vertices right there. I'll show you a graphic. So you have a little bit of a bend as the cross comes into the outside of the blade. Now, the practical effect of that is you have less of the blade coming in contact with the target, meaning there's less resistance as it chops through things. So I really think a lot more competition cutting swords should have that beautiful hollow grind. And this one being so subtle, you can see it. There's actually a convex edge in there, so when you reflect it, it looks like you're magnifying whatever you're looking at, just from a light perspective. So it looks absolutely beautiful. You can do your hair in it. I have no problems with it. So I'd say it's a 10 out of 10 sword, and people really should go spend their money over at Darksword. They've had kind of an interesting reputation in the past, is what I've heard. But their swords, as far as I can tell, I've had zero problems with. I look forward to doing more work with them in the future. So yeah, thanks for watching.